Imposter syndrome, the syndrome of imposters. While many people, I believe, have imposter syndrome, there are others who may simply just exist in a confusing system, making them feel like they are fraud. We are in a great transformation. The economy, as we know it, is transforming. The economy is transforming in terms of what labor is needed. Okay, let me say that in like the way normal people talk. A really big change is that robots can do a lot of the work that humans used to do, lifting heavy objects. And I don't mean like robots, like humanoid robots. I mean like machines, like Caterpillar type stuff. And these types of machines have gotten more nimble, they've gotten smaller, they've gotten more customizable, and just generally better and cheaper. So a lot of jobs are transitioning to, for example, the people who make these machines, who build the software that runs on these machines, the people who create the process for fixing the machines, and so on. This is called like the knowledge worker transition. And what's interesting about knowledge workers, and I swear I will get to imposter syndrome, okay? What's interesting about knowledge workers is that their jobs are constantly changing. Year to year, there are new skills you need to know. And this can feel like you're constantly behind, hence imposter syndrome. I told you I'd get to it. So not only do people have to learn constantly to do these jobs, but like nobody is seriously training anyone. There is no good training. There's no training that is like kind of constantly keeping you up to date, because let's be honest, that would be really, really hard to do. And it would take a huge effort. And the employees, these knowledge workers, they do the work. They figure it out basically by being really good at Googling. And then they go home and they feel inadequate because they figured something out by Googling, when in their mind they think, oh, I should have just known that, because that's how jobs work. You know stuff and you get hired and then you do the job. But jobs don't work like that anymore, and no one's got the memo. There are still jobs that are like more on the traditional track, like nurses, doctors, lawyers. They go to school or they get a certification, and that actually really helps with feeling inadequate, because even if you're not a good lawyer, you're like, I passed the bar, or I went to this law school, like you basically fulfilled a standard to do your job. Whereas when you're a knowledge worker doing a job that was just invented 2 years ago, there is no standard for doing your job, and you're never quite sure if you're doing a good job. And you might be doing a good job, you might not be doing a good job. There's no way for you to know, hence imposter syndrome. You are going to feel like a fraud because there's no way for you to check if you are a fraud or not. Additionally, you're doing stuff that frauds typically do, like looking stuff up, trying to figure things out on the fly, winging it. You're winging your job. So of course you're going to feel like a fraud. Employers also don't appreciate the mental energy and the like active learning it takes to do these types of jobs that are constantly evolving. So no one's really like appreciating you for the learning that you're doing, which is the one consistent thing about knowledge workers. So without that appreciation, you don't really realize that you're doing pretty okay. So even if you have really high confidence and good self-esteem, I think it's a really confusing industry to be in. We should talk more about this and not just let it fall on individuals like, oh, you should work on your self-esteem. It's all, it's all in your head, because it really isn't. There is this huge shift going, and the way we talk about work and think about work is still referencing how work was 40, 50 years ago. That world doesn't exist anymore. Those jobs don't exist anymore. College degrees that get you jobs don't exist anymore. Hi, I'm a software engineer and I studied art history at UCLA. That's a normal thing now. I think if you are struggling with this and you find that focusing on self-confidence and self-esteem isn't really working, I think it's good to just educate yourself on the knowledge worker transition and just figure out what world you're in. I'm willing to bet that doctors, lawyers, and nurses have a way lower incidence of imposter syndrome. But if you are in one of those fields and you do have imposter syndrome, I would love to learn more about how that pans out and where it comes from. Imposter syndrome. When a muffin thinks it's a donut. Imposter syndrome. When you keep showing up at people's houses and pretending you're part of their family. Imposter syndrome. When you're literally pretending to be someone else. Okay, let's all just take a moment and breathe.